Welcome everybody to our webinar today on unlocking efficiency. So today we're basically going to look through a whole heap of ways to configure our users and our user privileges in order to empower our staff members. We want to make sure everyone has exactly what they need without anything extra they don't, and potentially for our new training staff, nothing that could potentially affect our reports and wreck anything in our database. So we want to make sure that everyone is all ready to go with only the access that's required. So that's just going to help us with enhancing our efficiency and even just saving a lot of time by having everything ready to go exactly as we need it. So there's a whole heap of different features that will help us do exactly that. So we're going to run through them today. So once again, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop into the chat and Ida will be able to respond those to you. Lovely. Okay, let's begin. The first thing, obviously, with discussing our users is to jump into our user page within NewBook. So on our user page, obviously, when we're creating our brand new users, we know to add in our usernames and passwords. But the other important thing down the bottom is the privileges that we're going to be giving this brand new user. Now, if we wanted to, we could go into the privileges where we can see everything, literally so many different options of what we want our staff to have access to and not have access to. We could jump in here and click those little green buttons or those little tiles, marking green whatever we wanted our staff member to have access to, versus obviously leaving red what we didn't want them to have access to. But that takes a lot of time. So NewBook instead has given you a whole heap of user profiles. So these are just a whole heap of these privileges grouped together based on what we generally think that you're going to want for your staff members. So if this user was a housekeeping staff member, they're probably going to want to use our housekeeping default profile here. And you can tweak and adjust these as you need, which we'll go through in a second. If you are the owner of your property, you're going to want to have super profile. You're going to want to be able to click all the buttons, have all the access so that you can do everything you need within the system. But these particular user profiles, you can once again tweak them. You can create new ones. You can kind of play around with them or duplicate them, whatever is going to make it easier to update what your staff can and can't do. What that also means is, for instance, if we were creating a housekeeping staff member, if we did want to change the access for all of our housekeepers, we can just change our profile of housekeeping rather than changing every single user and adjusting those privileges within it. So we're going to go through those ones in a second. We can also review which profiles we've set for each of our users, which we can see in our profile tab over here. We can also use our advanced menu in our user search to sort by profile types or even departments. If we want to make sure each department, and we can link that on the user as well, that each department has its relevant profile. So for instance, Bianca has her housekeeping profile because she is in our housekeeping department. So if we jump into our search menu and type in our user profiles, we can see a little bit more about these. So these couple are the ones that NewBook has set into every single one of your databases already. They're ready to go, but we want you to play around with them and once again, customize the system to what's going to suit you. So super profile, we can see down the bottom, once again, it has all the privileges. And we can see we have 13 of our users that can access this. But housekeeping, maybe we want to change something with that. We can jump into our housekeeping profile. We can once again see the users that are using that profile. And up the top, we can edit our profile. Because there are so many privileges and ways to pick and choose who can do what and who has access to particular pages, we can use the search menu up the top here. So there's a whole heap of things here that are really important that maybe we don't want to allow, or we want to make sure that there's no way our staff members can void things, or we want to check if they can edit any payments or refunds. That might be something we don't want our housekeepers to have access to. Even overriding certain rates or rule restrictions or booking rates, or being able to approve any backdate requests. We might be happy for them to request, maybe they've made a mistake. Yesterday they made a payment and they typed in $100 instead of $10. We want them to let us know that they need to adjust this by creating a backdate request. But we as managers or as owners want to be able to actually be the one to say yes or no and have the final say to approve that. So that allows us to jump on in here and once again, give access or remove access if we don't want anyone to access certain areas, because we want to keep it nice and easy and nice and simple for staff members that haven't been trained on those particular areas to save just accidental mistakes happening. So within here, really good to kind of play around with these profiles. But if it was that there was a housekeeping profile, but one user, you want to be a little bit different, you can also duplicate existing user profiles and go, we still want to keep our housekeeping profile as is, but this might be our housekeeping manager. They're going to have a little bit more access. And then we can select any extra privileges that we want our housekeeping manager to have access to and save. So have a little bit of play with those. Obviously, have a look at what is there, because what we think that you might need might be different to what you might actually want your staff members to have access to. And that saves, obviously, as well, giving access to everybody for everything if there's certain pages that our team just aren't needing to jump into. So very, very handy. Cool. So now that we've gone through that side of things, I want to jump into something a little bit different, which is our little cogwheels that we see on all our different pages. I might actually jump into a different page that'll be a little bit more relevant, like our due for arrival list. Now, obviously, being a training database, I have lots of overdue arrivals, as we can see in yellow, so ignore that. But you might notice it looks a little bit different to the generic one you get when you start with New Book. Now, as a reception staff member, I really, really want to know extra stuff about my guests that are due to arrive. And that might be that I allow pets at my property, say. And I want to know that if a guest is bringing a pet, that they've signed my pet agreement prior to arrival, because if they haven't, I need to get that sorted before I allow them to check in. Now, from here, I can jump up to the top, as you can see I've done, to adjust my column configuration. Now, as you might notice, I've added in these two here to let me know as my reception staff member that this guest is bringing an animal. I've got two guests that are bringing their pets. And I can also see my e-sign document section that only one of those guests has filled out that form that I've sent them. So if I didn't have this in my due for arrival list, I could come up to my cogwheel and adjust what's in or what I can see within each of these columns. So by clicking into this field, I can adjust just for myself or for everybody in my instance, because we're logged into New Book Webinar. I can pick and choose if I want to add these into my visible columns on this page, or if I want to remove anything. Maybe as a reception staff member, I don't need to see if they're linked to a company. Maybe I do want to see how many adults are staying. So I can add or adjust what's showing on this particular page to help me most in my role. If I do make a mistake and change things too much, I can always come here to restore it back to the defaults. So don't worry about changing things too much. If anything, grab as many as you think you might need, see how it could help for you, and from there, remove anything that's not going to benefit you. We want to make sure you're just seeing the bits that are going to help you streamline that process, making sure, for instance, for this particular staff member, that we can see when we're checking in all our guests, once again, if we do have the relevant information that is required. All of these guests here obviously don't have animals, so I don't have to worry about their e-signable document. But for John Smith, I know I need to follow up with him straight away. Now from there, if I didn't, I could then remove it and get rid of those columns, because as management, I might just want to see who is coming and due to arrive on this particular list. I might also want to, instead of just seeing my arrivals for today, I might need to know how my arrivals are going for the month. I need a bigger bit of data as a manager to, once again, organize my team and my rosters. So I might decide that I want to see a month view every single time that I come into this due for arrival list. And that's where any of these settings at the bottom, if it's going to help you more in your role, if something is defaulted just for you, rather than you coming down here and having to maybe show notes, if there's notes attached to bookings, if you need to see that extra data, you can jump up to the top here to our default and required fields. And once again, just configure for yourself or for everybody that maybe you want the period range to be, instead of just today, to be a whole month. So you have a whole month worth of data of guests due to be arriving. Or that you do want to show any note types. So if there's extra notes attached to bookings that you need to know in your role, for whatever that might be, you could add in that information in here and save that option. I'm just going to cancel it because I generally use it for days. And that's going to help me in my role. So once again, we're empowering staff so that straight away they know exactly what they need and can continue about their day. So that's going to help you all. So definitely jump on into your pages, even jump down to those settings. See if there is a particular way of seeing that page that's going to give you more data that will help you obviously do what you need to. And if there's any extra columns, especially with our reports, there are lots of different columns that you can add to those reports that will give you more information and more insights about what is happening. And that can just be for yourself rather than for everybody else who may not need to know that extra data. So have a bit of a play with those and see what works for you. Cool. So we've gone through that side of things. We're also going to go through a few different user profile restrictions. So for instance, with our, I might go to discounts first. If you haven't jumped into creating some discounts, definitely pop on into this page. But if we jumped in to create a discount, this one might be our manager's discount, that if they're a bit complainy when we have a guest, we might be authorized to give that bit of a price drop. And that manager's discount might just be for 10%. Now down the bottom, because it is a manager's discount, I don't want my new staff members to have access to allow to drop those pricings down. I just want it for anyone that is a manager or is on that manager user profile. So I can adjust that. So just reception or general reception staff, they need to approve it with me first. So we're not giving too many discounts away. But my management staff are ready to go and enable that discount if we do need to offer it. So that can be a really great way to use those restrictions. And then the same thing with our rates. When we're setting up our applied rate, our rate types, there might be certain rate types, like my beautiful super secret VIP special, that may be same thing. We want to restrict it so only management or our more established staff members who know when we want to offer this great deal, we might only want them to be able to see that great offer that's linked to this particular rate type. So once again, we can jump down here. When our staff members are making those bookings, they will only see the rate types that they're able to or restricted to be able to see. Now, management would see an extra rate type of my super duper special because they know when it is useful for us to pass off that really great discount. So have a little look through that one. There's lots of different areas where you do have that option to restrict a user profile. So once again, making sure only the people that have been or that you've discussed those particular deals with do have access to that. Cool. We also have a few other things to change it up again. Once again, if you do have any questions on what we've gone through, please pop those into the chat and our lovely Ida will get back to you on those ones. But also we have something for logging in. So these are all obviously things once we've logged into the system, but there are two really good ways to make logging into NewBook even easier. So as you all might know, we do want to make sure our data is secure. That is our highest priority. So that means things like our multi-factor authentication that is our security token. So when we do log in, generally everyone will add in their username and password, as well as that security token. So we know and we can tell our guests that all of their data is secure. Now, another thing you can do, instead of having that security token, you can actually set up IP connections as that second safety step. So what that means is that instead of our security token, you can then set that for your office, the computers in your office, you know, are safe. That if someone uses their username and password to log in to NewBook and they're on your computer, they are beautiful and we want them to jump on in. So that would save us having to send out that security token and wait for that security token. So if you have a static IP connection, in that this little number, if you go into, even if you type into Google, what's my IP address, if that number doesn't change, perfect. You can copy and paste that number in here and go, this is our back office computer. NewBook will then know this is a safe device to log into. So in future, any users that are trying to log on in, if they're logging in on this particular device, they don't need that security token. If it is working from home, obviously they wouldn't be able to unless they literally went into Google, typed in what's your IP address, and then popped in that particular computer as safe. So that's usually good for obviously owners that are working all hours or managers. We can pick and choose which computers are safe so that no one has access that shouldn't, as well as making it easier to log in without waiting for that security token. If you don't have a static IP address, it is what's called dynamic and changes. You should be able to chat to your IT team to see if it can be switched to static, so you can enable this. The other thing you can do with that login, obviously when we are logging in, we type in our username and password, but you can also use that Outlook email address, if everyone has one, to use that to log in instead using Azure ID. How that basically works is with our users, the only thing that's really different once you connect that is that your username will just simply need to be your Outlook email address. So that when you're logging in, won't log out and log in again, but when you're logging in, you might even notice that Azure ID button on the right when you are on your login page. You'll be able to click on into that and literally not need to pop in that information. It will automatically recognize that you are logged in under your Outlook account, and you can just jump straight into the system, especially if you also have that IP connection. So that's really great for obviously not forgetting passwords when you're already ready to go. So if you want more info on that, don't hesitate to reach out to our lovely support team or use Knowledge Base. There's a lot of great ways that can make logging into the system quick and easy. Cool. We also, moving on to, because I'm just conscious of time, we've got lots to cover. We've also got our reports in NewBook. So as a manager, this can be really good to track these particular reports, like our staff statistics. So I'm just going to run our report. And I can see that for the week, these are my 3 staff members. I can see how many bookings have been placed, how many bookings they've cancelled, how many nights they've booked. So for instance, I can see Channing Tatum has booked 5. He's my winner of how many bookings have been placed this week. However, my NewBook Guru's staff member has actually made me the most money. So I can have the different promotions for my staff to try and see if they can get more bookings, or whoever gets the most bookings or earns the most revenue for me wins a prize, which makes it a little bit more fun. And obviously, hopefully gets us some more bookings as well with that extra incentive. I can see as well extra information about the earned percentage, all of that great data. It's a nice graph at the top to once again really highlight that information. And I can jump into my column configuration to pull through more information about my staff statistics. But this can be really good as someone trying to track your staff and all the great jobs that they're doing. We can see that nice and easy from here. There's also other reports like our Audit Log Report. We'll jump on into this one. Once again, I'm going to run it for the week, so it's got a bit of data. And this is going to show me everything that's changed or adjusted within my system. Just going to jump down to those settings there for a second for my week. If I did have a new staff member, I could even restrict it just to see the changes that that brand new staff member has made, just to keep an eye on what they're doing, making sure they're not doing anything they shouldn't be. If I scroll back up to the top, I can see all the different tabs and kind of different areas that they are changing. So for instance, if I notice that they've changed my sites within New Book, I can go, that doesn't seem quite right. And they've changed my site name from 22 to 21. So this brand new staff member, straight away, I've caught something that they've done that they shouldn't be doing, which maybe I've forgotten to add in a user privilege, given them too much access, and they've made a mistake. That's easy to do. So from here, as an example, and this does happen for some clients, especially new staff while they are learning the system. So I do want to point this one out. They've changed the name of my site from 22 to 21. And that sets off a light bulb in my head, because when I was looking at my bookings chart, I noticed that my powered sites, I suddenly had 2 site 21s and no site 22, and was very confused by this earlier. But I can see there was a booking that was on here. So I can jump on into each of these different sites and see which one actually had that change. So I'm going to jump into this one here. So this site that says it's site 21, up the top, I also have the audit log. So not just the audit log report showing me all the changes. If something doesn't seem quite right with a particular site or booking or guest, and I want to see any changes, I can jump up to my audit log. By jumping into my audit log, I can see that the old value was 22, but it was changed to 21. So I know that staff member accidentally or on purpose changed it from one to the other. Now, obviously, because I know it should be 22, I can jump back here and edit my site and switch it back to what it should be. But usually this particular scenario happens when staff members accidentally rename a site rather than moving Bugs Bunny to the applicable site. So that can be really handy to see that trail if anything has changed and you're wondering why it's a particular way or who has made those changes. So using that audit log at the top of the page, really handy for that information. There's also a few other reports that you can jump into, like our overridden rates and overridden booking rates. And just on the previous, obviously, we want to make sure our staff are doing the right thing. It's not about getting them in trouble. It's about empowering them to be able to do things the correct way and to make sure that they are doing what they need to be doing in the system. But yeah, anyway, continuing with our overridden rates. So this is referring to our rates chart. If we were to change any of those rates on that page, this will show on our overridden rates section. So if I can see my new staff member is changing rates and they shouldn't be, and I've forgotten to not give them access to do so, firstly, good on them, because that's a really great thing to learn on their own. But obviously as well, we might need to change it back. So that can be a good way to check that information. And I can also see maybe if I had just given them access, that they've actually overridden my rates to being a fixed price of $10. Whereas I think I told them, or I remember telling them that I wanted to decrease by $10. So I can straight away get in there and fix that by being able to see what has been changed in my system. I also have my overridden booking rates. Now this one can be really good to check and just keep your staff accountable. Because for instance, I can see my different staff members that have gone in to edit a booking and double clicked the rate on that section to make it a little bit cheaper or more expensive, generally cheaper. I can see how many overrides my staff members are doing. So straight away, I can see my New Book Gurus staff member is doing a lot more than what my other staff are. And I can also see the total difference. So for instance, Channing's done a few overrides, but it's only mattered or changed about $3 worth. Whereas New Book Gurus, over the course of a week, this is run for a week, has dropped my pricing down by over $2,000. So that allows me to jump in and check what bookings he's overridden, or she, because they're giving a bit too much away, and we need them to just clarify and be accountable for why they're offering those great discounts. That's where sometimes the discounts work better than our overridden booking rates, because we can also run a report using our discount report, and that will help us track Awesome. New Book Gurus did 10 seniors discounts for X amount of dollars, or 10 complaint discounts for, once again, $1,000, because maybe we're just having a bad week with, I don't know, Optus being down and not being able to help our guests as much as we can. So that kind of info can be really handy. But either way, for this amount of difference or override, we might want to chat to New Book Gurus and check why they're giving so many discounts away. Cool. Also, a few other little ones that I do want to go through with our last bit of time. Our notifications. So when you're creating tasks, or even if you are adding post-it notes on your front desk page, that gives us the option to create a notification. But you can just create a little bit of a pop-up to appear when your staff log in without any of those things. Either way, if they are separate or they are part of a task, by popping in that great little message, you can assign to specific staff members or everybody. You can then use those staff departments to pick and choose if just your maintenance team need to know about whatever change that has happened, or that we really need to get onto cutting down the grass so it's nice and short. And with those notifications, we can keep our staff accountable that they are actually checking those, because we're taking the time probably as management to make sure our staff are up to date. We want to make sure who's looking at those, and obviously if they are aware of it, that they are following through with it. So for instance, reminding Sally about a shift change, I can see that my New Book Gurus staff member and Rosie have both acknowledged it. So that means when you see the little pop-up at the top, they've clicked dismiss. So they've gone, yep, I know about this. If I see Sally, I'll be able to reach out to her about the staff change. So if I know that Rosie had been speaking to Sally, but Sally still didn't know anything about a staff change because she's been off sick, I can maybe double check why she wasn't helping Sally out with that shift change information, or anything else that's happening in my system. So this is a really good way to track those notifications, make sure that everyone is doing what they should be, and is notified of everything that they need to know about as well. We've also got things like our checklists. So once again, if there is a particular page where you think maybe a new staff member or someone seems to not quite be doing everything they should be doing. So for instance, on our bookings check-in page, I edit my checklist. These are the 3 things that are most important to me. I want to make sure my staff are checking that guest registration, offering the upgrade, and remembering to smile. I can make sure that it's required, that physically they cannot check in that booking unless they have ticked off that they've done those 3 things. And that might just be restricted for if the booking was made, I'm just going to pick on Bianca at the top here, restricted by bookings made by Bianca, because maybe I might know that Bianca might not have sent through those guest registrations. So I need to double check any booking that was placed by Bianca. Or it might be that only certain staff members that are newer need to be reminded of these items. So once again, it might be that just for her, that we want to make sure she is learning the best processes when checking guests in. And how this would look on our due for arrival page. If we were to check in our guest, we can jump on in and pretend we're checking in our guest. We can click into the little arrow on the right-hand side and we can see if we've done these 3 things. If we hadn't, when we do go to confirm our check-in, we can see, hey, have you done these 3? So we can tick them off. So that's going to help our staff and empower them to remember to do these wonderful things that are really going to make a difference to our guests, like just being able to remember to smile. Our last couple of items, we're just going to jump into our instance settings. And in here, if you type in the word check, we've got a few here as well. So in relations to our check-ins, allow check-in if the booking account is outstanding. So on our due for arrival page, we saw a few accounts that did owe us money. So if you don't allow guests to check in with their accommodation outstanding, that we physically want to help staff remember to not do that and to grab that revenue from the guest, we can switch this one to no. Or if it's just at least before check out, we want to make sure our staff aren't accidentally checking anyone out with an outstanding balance, we can switch that one as well. Another one that you definitely should have switched is allow check-in if the site is not clean. We don't want any guests going into dirty sites. And by continuing to mark those as completed on our housekeeping list, that will be updating our sites so that NewBook knows that site is clean and our staff members are able to check in those guests. So those are very, very handy settings, along with this one at the top. Obviously, we don't want anyone checking in if there's still someone on the site. So make sure you do have those set up. Especially our client account, we want to make sure that we are getting that revenue before the guest departs. Otherwise, it's a little bit trickier. Final couple of items here. We've got 2 more to go, which is our custom fields. If you haven't done these or played around with them, they are really, really handy. Obviously, we have lots of different clients from all different backgrounds and different setups. So, for instance, on our bookings page, if we wanted an extra field there to record anything, I'm just going to pop in a random little bit of letter here. If we need to record this as text, or it's a number, or it's a tick box of yes, they do need this or they don't, or if it's a few different options of yes, they have agreed that their pet will be good, or that they are bringing multiple pets, or whatever that might be, we can add that extra field into our when we're checking or creating our booking. This can also display offline or online, but we can restrict it to certain user profiles. So if it's just our reception staff that we need to make sure that when they're making the booking, they're recording this information, fantastic. Whereas if, for instance, our marketing staff are helping us out by taking extra bookings over a busy period, we might not need them to check that. We might follow up with it later because we just want their help with getting all of those wonderful Christmas bookings into our system. And final thing, if we were to jump into our ad booking page, another thing that could be really helpful is up the top here, our default and required fields. So when we are adding a booking, we can see all of the data that's here, but maybe some of these optional booking details, like our booking method, our booking source, reason, demographics, these are all really great bits of information for you and your staff to be recording for reporting purposes, marketing purposes. They are some really great handy bits of data that can help you overall with pretty much everything. So if these are fields that aren't just optional, we want to make them mandatory and move to this page here. We can jump up to our required fields and we can change, because it's going to be for everybody, we can change what is required. So if there are things like our booking source, we want it to be required, we want it to show on that mandatory page, we could save that configuration, refresh that page. We can now see booking source is here. Our staff members cannot save this booking without remembering to add in that extra bit of data. So that can be really, really handy for all of us to find out a little bit more about our guests and help with future bookings. But I think we've gone through lots and lots of different items within here. I did see Edith's just jumped on out, so I was just checking that. Oh, can you copy users and user profiles? So basically users and user profiles. User profiles you definitely can copy, not to your other instances though, unless you do have shared profiles. So if you are part of a corporation or enterprise, you can actually set up user profiles from your corporation, your enterprise, and it will feed through. But within just individual instances, it is something that you do just simply need to adjust yourself and add on in. But that's nice and easy to obviously just compare, even have them on one screen and the other. But really great question there. And I think that was the only main question from there. But if you do have any extra questions, please feel free to reach out to our lovely support team, even if you wanted to set up any of these. And then, yeah, we can kind of go through from there. But I will close this webinar off, so I hope you enjoyed. Once again, it is recorded, so you can listen back to it. It will be available on our YouTube page. And if you want to stick around, we'd love to hear your feedback. There will be a short little survey if you want to give us any feedback on what you might want to see in future webinars. But that's it for me. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and bye for now.